In the beginning there were only hills. 7 gentle rises in the landscape, covered in morning mist, waiting quietly through the centuries for their story to unfold. The Tiber River flows as it has always flowed, winding through valleys where wildflowers bloom in soft colors, where the grass grows long and whispers in the breeze. This is the land before Rome, a place of simple peace, where shepherds guide their flocks from one hillside to another, following paths worn smooth by countless footsteps, paths that remember nothing yet, but will one day remember everything. Breathe in the morning air of ancient Latium, cool and fresh, carrying the scent of river water and wild herbs. The sky lightens slowly, patiently, revealing the gentle contours of the 7 hills one by one. Palatine Hill stands quiet in the growing light. Capitoline Hill waits beside it. Aventine, Caelian, Esquiline, Viminal, and Quirinal. Each hill has its own character, its own slopes and shadows, but all rest together in peaceful harmony, innocent still of the great city they will become. The shepherds rise with the sun, as shepherds have always risen, moving with the unhurried rhythm of people who measure time in seasons rather than hours. They kindle small fires that send thin streams of smoke into the morning sky. They speak to one another in the old Latin tongue, their voices carrying across the valleys, mingling with the bleating of sheep and the gentle sound of bells. Their days are simple and repetitive, comforting in their sameness, leading the flocks to graze, finding water, returning home as the sun descends. Along the riverbanks, small villages cluster together, round huts with thatched roofs, walls of wattle and daub that blend into the earth itself. These are the first Romans, though they do not yet know this name, do not yet dream of eagles and empires. They are farmers and herders, people of the land, who plant their crops according to the moon and harvest according to the sun. They gather in the evenings to share bread and stories, to pass down the old tales that explain the world around them. The Tiber itself is a presence, always flowing, always constant. Its waters catch the light and hold it shimmering like molten bronze in the afternoon, turning silver and mysterious as evening falls. The river provides fish and water for the crops. It carries small boats loaded with grain and pottery. It marks the boundary between the known and the unknown, the settled and the wild. Listen to its eternal flowing, the sound that will outlast kingdoms and emperors, the sound that remembers everything and nothing. In these early days, before the name Rome has been spoken, before the she-wolf and the twin brothers, before the first stone is laid upon another stone, there is only this: the turning of the seasons, the growing of the grain, the tending of the flocks. Spring brings new lambs and green shoots. Summer ripens the wheat and warms the hillsides. Autumn offers harvest and preparation. Winter quiets everything, drawing the people close to their fires, giving them long nights for stories and dreams. And then spring returns, as it always returns, and the cycle continues, peaceful and eternal, like breathing, like the slow beating of the earth's own heart. And then, as all things must change, even in the quietest places, a story begins. Though whether it is history or legend, no one can say for certain, and perhaps it does not matter. Perhaps what matters is only the telling, the gentle rhythm of words, carrying us back to a time when twins were born to a sacred destiny. Romulus and Remus, sons of Mars, and a Vestal virgin, abandoned as infants, set adrift on the river's patient current, discovered by a she-wolf who nursed them as her own. Picture the cave, the Lupercal, dark and cool beneath the Palatine Hill, where the she-wolf tends to 2 human children as carefully as if they were her cubs. The twins grow strong in this wild nursery, learning the language of animals and earth before they learn the language of men. Eventually, a shepherd finds them, brings them to his home, raises them among his own children. The twins grow tall and restless, filled with dreams larger than the hills around them, touched by divinity, marked for something greater than the simple shepherd's life. When they become men, Romulus and Remus decide to found a city, to gather people together, to build something lasting upon these ancient hills. But they cannot agree on which hill should hold this new city's heart. Romulus favors the Palatine, where the wolf once sheltered them. Remus prefers the Aventine, with its broader view. They turn to the gods for guidance, watching the sky for omens, counting the flight of birds across the heavens. The augury favors Romulus, but brothers do not always accept defeat with grace. What happens next is tragedy, brief and violent, a shadow that falls across the founding day. In a moment of anger, Romulus kills his brother Remus, and with this blood the city is consecrated, marked from its very beginning with both greatness and sorrow. Romulus buries his brother with honor, speaks prayers over the grave, but the deed cannot be undone, and so Rome is born from fratricide, a truth that will echo through all its history, a reminder that even the greatest things can rise from flawed and complicated beginnings. But let us not dwell in darkness. Let us move forward to the building, to the gathering, to the slow and patient work of creating something new. Romulus marks out the city's sacred boundary, the pomerium, plowing a furrow around the Palatine Hill, lifting the plow at the places where gates will stand. This line separates the city from the countryside, the sacred from the profane, the civilized from the wild. It is a small boundary at first, enclosing only one hill, but it is a beginning. People come slowly at first, then in greater numbers. Outcasts and adventurers, refugees and dreamers, those who seek a fresh start in a new place. Romulus welcomes them all, understanding that a city needs people more than it needs perfection. The population grows, but it is mostly men, and a city cannot endure without families, without children, without continuity. And so another story unfolds, another necessary deed that will be remembered through the ages. The abduction of the Sabine women, another act of violence that somehow transforms into peace. The Romans invite their Sabine neighbors to a festival, a celebration with games and feasting, and in the midst of the festivities, the Roman men seize the Sabine women, claiming them as wives. The Sabine men retreat to gather their forces, and war seems inevitable. But time passes, and the Sabine women, now mothers of Roman children, stand between the two armies when they finally meet in battle. The women plead for peace, refusing to see their fathers fight their husbands, their brothers fight their sons. And the men, moved by this courage, this wisdom, lay down their weapons and join together, Sabines and Romans becoming one people, sharing the 7 hills, building the city together in harmony. And so the city grows, slowly, organically, like a tree adding rings with each passing year. Romulus reigns as the first king, establishing customs and laws, creating the Senate from the wisest elders, organizing the people into tribes and curiae. He divides the citizens into patricians and plebeians, a distinction that will shape Roman society for centuries to come. He creates the first legions, teaching the Romans to fight in organized formations rather than as individual warriors. Everything he does is a foundation, a beginning, a seed planted for future generations to nurture. The days in early Rome follow comforting patterns. Farmers work the fields on the hillsides and in the valleys, growing spelt and barley, tending small gardens of vegetables and herbs. Artisans craft pottery and tools, working clay and bronze with patient hands, creating objects that are simple but sturdy, made to last. Women weave wool into cloth, the shuttle passing back and forth across the loom in a rhythm as steady as breathing, as steady as the river's flow. Children play in the streets and squares, their laughter rising like birdsong into the clear Italian sky. The Forum begins as a marshy valley between the hills, a meeting place where people gather to trade goods and exchange news, where disputes are settled and decisions are made. Over time, it will be drained and paved, will fill with temples and monuments, but for now, it is still half wild, still finding its purpose, a space of possibility and potential. Markets appear in the early morning, vendors spreading their wares on simple cloths, baskets of grain, bundles of herbs, clay vessels, woven goods. Voices call out prices and greetings, bargaining and laughing, creating the particular music of human commerce, human connection. After Romulus, who disappears one day in a storm and is said to have been taken up to become a god, comes Numa Pompilius, the second king, a man of peace and piety, who rules not with the sword, but with wisdom and religious devotion. Where Romulus built the city's physical foundations, Numa builds its spiritual ones. He establishes the calendar, dividing the year into months, creating festivals and holy days that give rhythm and meaning to the passage of time. He builds temples to the gods, creates the college of Vestal virgins to tend the sacred fire that must never be allowed to die, for it represents Rome's eternal spirit. Under Numa's gentle reign, the Romans learned to honor the gods properly, to perform the rituals that maintain harmony between heaven and earth. They learned to read omens in the flight of birds, in the feeding of chickens, in the patterns of lightning across the sky. They learned the importance of auspices and auguries, of beginning no important undertaking without divine approval. These practices will become fundamental to Roman identity, a deep religious consciousness that persists even when the empire spans 3 continents. The sacred fire burns in its temple, tended day and night by the Vestal virgins, 6 women chosen as children to serve for 30 years, keeping their vows of chastity, maintaining the flame that represents Rome's life force. Watch the fire burning steadily, its light never wavering, its warmth spreading outward in gentle waves. The Vestals add wood carefully, methodically, ensuring the flame receives what it needs, but is never smothered. Their movements are practiced and precise, almost meditative, a ritual repeated so many times it becomes a form of prayer without words. Numa teaches the Romans to live in harmony with the seasons and the gods, to understand that a city is more than walls and weapons, that it must have a soul, must have rituals and traditions that bind people together across generations. When he finally dies, peaceful and old, he leaves behind a Rome transformed, still small, still young, but growing in wisdom as well as size, developing the character that will sustain it through centuries of triumphs and trials yet to come. The kings continue, one after another, each adding something to the growing city, each leaving their mark upon the 7 hills. Tullus Hostilius, whose very name suggests war, expands Rome's territory through conquest, absorbing the nearby city of Alba Longa, bringing its people to settle in Rome, swelling the population, extending the city's reach. Then comes Ancus Marcius, who balances war with peace, conquest with consolidation, building Rome's first bridge across the Tiber, founding the port of Ostia at the river's mouth where it meets the sea, connecting the city to trade routes and possibilities beyond the hills. But let us pause here, let us slow our breathing and our thoughts, and simply observe the daily life that continues regardless of which king sits in power, regardless of which wars are won or lost. For history is made not just by great men and their deeds, but by ordinary people doing ordinary things day after day, season after season, creating through their patient labor the foundation upon which everything else rests. Imagine a morning in early Rome, the sun rising over the Esquiline hill, its first rays touching the thatched roofs and sending long shadows across the dusty streets. A baker kindles his oven, feeding the fire until it reaches the right temperature, then sliding in loaves of bread to bake, filling the air with that most comforting of scents. A potter opens her workshop, uncovering her wheel, wetting her hands, centering a lump of clay and beginning to shape it, her hands moving with the assurance of long practice, creating form from formlessness. In the houses, families wake and begin their morning rituals. Water is drawn from wells or carried from the river in clay vessels balanced on shoulders. Simple breakfasts are prepared, bread with a little cheese perhaps, some fruit, watered wine. The household shrine receives its offerings, a few drops of wine, a pinch of grain, prayers murmured to the household gods, the lares and peanuts, who protect the family and the home. These small acts of devotion, repeated every morning in every house, create an invisible network of piety that holds the city together. The men go to their work, some to the fields beyond the city walls, some to workshops and forges, some to construction sites where new buildings are slowly rising. The sound of hammers on stone and bronze rings out across the hills, a rhythm as steady as a heartbeat. The women, too, have their work, spinning and weaving, preparing food, teaching children, tending gardens, managing households. Their labor is no less essential, no less valuable, though it will often go unrecorded in the histories that prefer to chronicle battles and kings. Children learn by watching and helping, absorbing skills and knowledge through patient observation and practice. A boy stands beside his father at the forge, watching how the metal is heated and hammered, learning when to strike and when to wait. A girl sits at the loom with her mother, learning to manage the threads, to create patterns, to maintain the tension that produces strong, even cloth. Education happens not in schools, but in homes and workshops. Knowledge passing from generation to generation like water, flowing from one vessel to another. As midday approaches, the heat grows stronger, and the pace of work slows. People seek shade, rest briefly, take simple meals. The forum begins to fill with those who have business there. Men discussing politics and trade, settling disputes, making agreements. Lawyers argue cases before magistrates. Merchants negotiate contracts. The hum of conversation rises and falls like the sound of bees in a summer garden, productive and purposeful, but not frantic, not rushed. Evening brings a gradual winding down, a return to homes and families. Simple dinners are prepared and shared. Neighbors gather to talk, to exchange news and gossip, to tell stories. Children play in the twilight until they are called inside. Lamps are lit, small clay vessels filled with oil, their flames gentle and warm. And gradually, as darkness deepens over the 7 hills, the city quiets, settling into sleep, resting so it can rise again tomorrow and continue the patient work of becoming, of growing, of building something that will endure. The 5th king is Tarquinius Priscus, an Etruscan who brings with him the sophisticated culture of the north, introducing new arts and engineering to the growing city. Under his direction, Rome begins to transform from a collection of villages into something more unified, more planned, more permanent. The marshy forum is finally drained through the construction of the Cloaca Maxima, the Great Sewer, an engineering feat that allows the heart of the city to become truly usable, truly central. Wooden buildings begin to give way to stone, temples grow larger and more elaborate, their roofs adorned with terracotta decorations in the Etruscan style. Tarquinius begins the construction of the great temple to Jupiter on the Capitoline Hill, though he will not live to see it completed. Imagine the slow, patient work of building, stone blocks cut from quarries and transported on wooden sledges, pulled by oxen moving at their own unhurried pace. Each block is shaped and fitted carefully, precisely, with the understanding that this temple is being built not just for today, but for eternity. The workers move with practiced efficiency, but without haste, knowing that sacred work cannot be rushed, that the gods appreciate thoroughness more than speed. His successor, Servius Tullius, continues this work of organization and improvement. He builds a great defensive wall around all 7 hills, finally unifying them into a single protected space, a true city rather than a cluster of settlements. The Servian Wall, as it will be known, represents both protection and definition. It declares clearly where Rome ends and the rest of the world begins. It is built of large tufa blocks, fitted together without mortar, relying on weight and careful construction to create strength. Workers toil year after year, slowly extending the wall from hill to hill, creating a circuit that embraces the entire city. Servius also reforms the political structure, organizing citizens not by birth but by wealth, creating the centuriate assembly that will become fundamental to Roman government. He conducts the first census, counting all the people of Rome, understanding that to govern well, one must first know who and what one governs. These changes do not happen suddenly, dramatically, but gradually, carefully, each adjustment building upon what came before, each reform preserving what works while improving what doesn't. But the last king, Tarquinius Superbus, the proud, rules with arrogance and cruelty, forgetting the compact between king and people, imagining himself above the customs and traditions that have sustained Rome through generations. His reign begins with murder and continues with tyranny. He does not consult the Senate. He does not respect the laws. He treats Romans as subjects rather than citizens. And when his son commits a terrible crime against Lucretia, a noble woman of unimpeachable virtue, the people's patience finally breaks. Lucretia, after being violated by the king's son, calls her family together, tells them what has happened, demands that they avenge her honor, and then takes her own life, choosing death over dishonor. Her suicide becomes a catalyst, a spark that ignites the accumulated resentment of years. Led by Lucius Junius Brutus, the Romans rise up, not in sudden violence, but in firm determination. They expel the king and his family from the city. They declare that Rome will never again be ruled by a king. They establish instead a republic, a res publica, a public thing, governed not by one man, but by laws and elected magistrates. The year is traditionally given as 509 BCE, though dates in this early period are uncertain, approximations rather than facts. What matters is not the precise year, but the transformation, the fundamental shift from monarchy to republic. 2 consuls are elected to serve for 1 year, each able to veto the other, ensuring that power is shared and limited. The Senate becomes the central governing body, advising the consuls, debating policy, representing the accumulated wisdom of Rome's leading families. And so the republic begins, not perfect, not complete, but full of possibility. The rhythm of daily life continues much as before. Bread is still baked, pottery is still thrown, fields are still plowed, children are still taught. But something has changed in the air, in the spirit of the city. Romans are no longer subjects, but citizens. They have rights as well as duties. They have a voice, however limited at first, in their own governance. And from this seed will grow something unprecedented, a republic that will endure for 5 centuries, that will expand across the known world, that will transform not just Rome, but all of human history. But that is a story for another time, another breath, another gentle drift toward sleep. And so that time has come, that breath has arrived, and we drift now into the long, steady rhythm of the Republic's expansion, like watching waves return to shore again and again, each one reaching just a little further than the last. The Rome we find now is no longer merely 7 hills, no longer just the story of shepherds and kings. It has grown slowly, patiently, the way a tree adds rings with each passing year. The expelled kings have faded into memory, and in their place stands something new, a government of citizens, of councils and assemblies, of consuls elected each year like the turning of seasons. Feel the rhythm of it, this annual cycle of choosing leaders, of debating in the forum, of making decisions not by the word of one man, but by the voices of many, rising and falling like a gentle tide. The Senate meets in their dignified chamber, senators in their togas with purple borders, speaking in measured tones about treaties and roads, about grain supplies and distant threats. Their voices echo softly off marble walls, a murmur of deliberation that will become the heartbeat of this republic. And beyond the Senate, beyond the political machinery, there are the people themselves, the plebeians and patricians, farmers and merchants, all moving through their days with the comforting repetition of ritual and routine. Morning comes to Rome as it always has, with mist rising from the Tiber, with the crow of roosters in the valley, with the gentle stirring of a city waking to another day of steady purpose. But Rome cannot remain still, cannot stay confined to its hills, for it is surrounded by neighbors, by other Italian tribes with their own ambitions and territories. And so begins the slow, methodical expansion across the Italian peninsula, not in a rush, not in a frenzy, but with the patient determination of a mason laying one stone upon another, building something meant to last. Season after season the legions march out, their sandaled feet falling in rhythm on ancient paths, the sound of their movement like a meditation, left, right, the creak of leather, the soft clink of equipment, the breathing of men moving as one. These are citizen soldiers, farmers, and craftsmen who set aside their plows and tools when Rome calls, who train in the Campus Martius until they move like a single organism, shield beside shield, each man trusting the one beside him. Watch them make camp as evening falls, the same ritual every night, the same measured layout, the vellum raised, the tents arranged in perfect order, cook fires lit in precise rows. There is comfort in this repetition, in knowing exactly what comes next, in the unchanging routines that turn a collection of men into something greater. The Samnites resist, fierce mountain warriors with their own proud traditions, and the conflicts stretch across decades, 3 wars that blend into one long, slow rhythm of march and countermarch, of winter truces and spring campaigns. But Rome persists, absorbs, adapts, incorporating defeated peoples not as slaves but as allies, planting colonies like seeds across the peninsula, each one a small version of Rome itself, with its own forum, its own temples, its own steady heartbeat synchronized with the capital. By the time the sun has risen and set enough times to mark a few generations, Rome stands master of Italy, from the Po Valley in the north to the Greek cities of the south, all woven together by roads and treaties, by shared interests and mutual defense. And it is here, at this moment of accomplishment, that Rome's gaze turns outward, across the wine-dark Mediterranean, to where other powers hold sway over islands and coastlines, over the ancient trade routes that connect east and west. Carthage rises in Roman awareness like a distant storm cloud, this wealthy city on the North African coast, this maritime empire, with its painted ships and its colonies in Sicily, in Sardinia, in Spain. The two powers circle each other like cautious animals, and when they finally clash, it will not be a brief encounter, but a struggle that spans generations, that becomes the defining rhythm of Roman life for over a century. The First Punic War unfolds with the slowness of continental drift, 23 years of seasonal campaigns and naval battles, of Rome learning to build ships by copying a captured Carthaginian vessel, plank by plank, nail by nail. Feel the patience required, the steady determination to master an entirely new form of warfare, to take farmers who have never seen the sea and teach them to row in rhythm, to fight on rolling decks, to face the practiced Carthaginian sailors with their centuries of maritime tradition. The war becomes routine, becomes part of the rhythm of Roman years. Spring brings campaigns, summer brings battles, autumn brings retreat, winter brings respite and repair. Young men grow old in this service, consuls come and go, seasons turn like a great wheel, and still the conflict continues, neither side able to land the decisive blow that will end it. But peace does come eventually, as all things come with patience. Carthage withdraws from Sicily, pays indemnity, and for a time the Mediterranean breathes easier and Rome settles into the comfortable rhythms of administration and consolidation, of building and growing and becoming accustomed to its expanded role. Yet the peace is merely an interlude, a breath between movements, because Carthage too is building, recovering, expanding in Spain, and there emerges from this distant western province a figure who will test Rome as it has never been tested, Hannibal Barca, whose very name will become synonymous with threat, with danger, with the nightmare that haunts Roman dreams. But even this, even the terror of Hannibal's approach, unfolds with a strange, dreamlike quality when viewed from the distance of time, when we allow the urgency to drain away and observe only the patterns, the rhythms, the way events flow like water, finding its course. Hannibal crosses the Alps, an impossible feat, bringing elephants over frozen passes, losing half his army to cold and avalanche and the hostile mountain tribes, yet arriving in northern Italy with enough strength to shatter Roman armies like pottery. 3 times the legions march out to stop him, and 3 times they are destroyed, at the Trebia River, at Lake Trasimene, at Cannae. The names echo down through history, but here, in this gentle space of half-sleep, they are simply places where men learned hard lessons, where Rome discovered the limits of its tactics, where a city faced its mortality and refused to yield. For Hannibal roams Italy for years, 15 years, like a wolf circling but never quite reaching the sheepfold, never quite able to break Rome itself, while the city endures, adapts, learns, and slowly, patiently begins to turn the tide. And here is where we find the true character of the Republic, not in its victories but in its refusal to surrender after defeat, in its capacity to absorb loss after loss and continue, like a tree that bends in the storm but does not break. While Hannibal wanders Italy, Rome raises new legions, chooses new consuls, maintains its alliances, and slowly, methodically, strikes at Carthaginian holdings elsewhere, in Spain, in Sicily, in Africa itself. A general named Scipio emerges, young and brilliant, who studies Hannibal's tactics and learns from them, who takes the war to Spain and then to North Africa, who finally draws Hannibal back to defend Carthage itself, and there, at Zama, ends the long nightmare with a Roman victory. The Second Punic War concludes, and Carthage is humbled, stripped of its empire, reduced to a client state, and Rome stands astride the western Mediterranean like a colossus, no longer a regional power, but something approaching a world empire. Yet in Rome itself, in the Forum and the Senate, in the homes and villas and marketplaces, life continues with its comforting routines. Citizens wake to the same dawn, conduct the same business, offer the same prayers to the same gods. The baker kneads his dough in the same rhythm his father used, the potter shapes his clay with the same practiced motions. The farmer follows his plow across the same fields, back and forth, making furrows straight as Roman roads. There is peace in this continuity, in knowing that beneath all the grand events of history, the daily life of ordinary people flows on like a quiet stream, eternal and unchanging, the true foundation upon which empires are built. And as the Republic settles into its new reality, as it begins to understand the responsibilities and burdens of dominance, we too settle deeper into rest, into the gentle rhythms that carry us toward sleep, toward dreams of marble and olive groves, of distant legions keeping watch, of a civilization finding its stride, steady and sure, breathing in and breathing out, like the tide, like the seasons, like the turning of the eternal stars above. And so we arrive, gently, at a moment of change, a turning point that comes not with thunder, but with the soft inevitability of dawn after a long night. The Republic, which has grown mighty through the centuries we have wandered together, now stands at the threshold of transformation, and we shall cross it slowly, peacefully, as one drifts from waking into sleep. Julius Caesar returns from Gaul, where for 9 years his legions have marched through forests and across rivers, and in his wake comes not just conquest, but roads, stone roads that will carry trade and travelers for 1,000 years. Picture these roads now, stretching across the green hills of Gaul, straight and purposeful, built stone by patient hands, each block fitted to the next in an endless rhythm of construction. The Legion engineers measure and level, the same motions repeated 10,000 times until the road reaches the horizon. Along these roads, even now, merchants are beginning their journeys, their carts creaking in a gentle rhythm, oxen plodding steadily through the morning mist. But in Rome itself, the old republic trembles, not with fear, but with the weight of its own greatness. Like an ancient tree that has grown too vast for its roots, the Senate meets in its familiar halls, where shafts of sunlight fall through high windows, illuminating dust motes that drift like tiny stars in the still air. Voices echo softly in debate, the same arguments made generation after generation, conservative and traditional, the voice of careful governance. Caesar crosses the Rubicon, that small river whose name will echo through history, but we need not hurry with him. Instead, we linger by the water's edge, watching it flow as it has always flowed, clear and cool, murmuring over smooth stones. The die is cast, he says, but dice tumble slowly in our story, and we watch them turn in the air, suspended, catching the light. The civil war that follows we shall see only from a distance, as one might observe clouds gathering far away on the horizon, knowing they will pass. What matters for our peaceful journey is what comes after, the transformation of Rome from republic to something new, something that will bring a peace deeper and longer than any the world has known. Caesar himself, brilliant and restless, will not live to see this peace completed. On the Ides of March, in the theater of Pompey, the senators gather round, and history turns on its axis, but gently now, gently. We need not dwell on violence, only on change, on the eternal cycle of ending and beginning that governs all things, as natural as leaves falling in autumn, as peaceful as snow covering the forum in winter's hush. And from this moment of transformation, like a flower opening slowly to the sun, comes Octavian, Caesar's heir, who will become Augustus, the peaceful emperor, the builder of the golden age we are about to enter together. Slowly, so slowly, like sinking into the warmth of a Roman bath, letting the heated water embrace us as we descend into tranquility. Augustus rises to power, not with the sword, but with patience, with careful diplomacy, with the slow building of consensus that transforms Rome while preserving the comforting illusion of continuity. He does not call himself emperor, preferring instead the title of first citizen princeps, one among equals, though all know where true authority rests. But this authority he wields gently, like a shepherd guiding sheep, and under his long rule, 40 years of steady governance, the Roman world exhales and relaxes into peace. The Pax Romana begins, the Roman peace, and we shall dwell in it for a long while now, feeling its calm settle over us like a warm blanket on a cool evening. Close your eyes and see Augustan Rome in its morning freshness, the old brick and timber city being slowly clothed in marble. He found Rome a city of brick, it will be said, and left it a city of marble, and this transformation happened slowly, building by building, year by year. The old forum is paved anew, its stones fitted perfectly, each one placed with care. The temple of Saturn is rebuilt, its columns rising white and perfect against the blue sky, each flute carved by patient craftsmen who know their work will stand for centuries. And new forums are built, spacious and grand, where citizens can gather in the shade of colonnades, speaking softly, conducting business with measured gestures, the very picture of civilization, at ease with itself. The aqueducts are extended, those magnificent structures that stride across the landscape on endless arches, bringing fresh water from distant hills into the heart of the city. Listen to that water now, flowing constantly day and night, through channels lined with smooth cement, splashing into fountains, filling the great baths where Romans of every class come to relax, to socialize, to ease away the concerns of the day in pools of varying temperature. First the tepidarium, warm and welcoming, then the caldarium, hot and steaming, muscle softening, breathing deepening, and finally the frigidarium, cool and refreshing. But we need not hurry through these rooms. We can linger in the warm water, floating, suspended, letting time dissolve. In these baths, a senator might relax beside a merchant, a soldier beside a scholar, all equal in the democratic embrace of warm water and rising steam. Outside, beyond the city walls, the countryside settles into prosperous routine. Villas dot the hills surrounding Rome, country estates where wealthy Romans retreat from the business of the city. Picture one such villa now, set among olive groves and vineyards, its walls painted with frescoes of garden scenes, creating the illusion that indoors and outdoors merge seamlessly. In the atrium, the impluvium catches rainwater, its surface perfectly still, reflecting the sky like a mirror of polished bronze. A fountain trickles somewhere in the peristyle garden, a sound so constant it becomes almost like silence, the background rhythm against which the household moves through its peaceful day. The Roman roads extend farther now, reaching into every province, connecting the vast empire in a network of stone pathways that pulse with gentle commerce and communication. From Britain in the north to Egypt in the south, from Spain in the west to Syria in the east, all roads lead to Rome, and along them flows the peaceful traffic of empire. Imperial couriers ride at steady pace, carrying messages from the emperor to distant governors, their horses' hooves beating out a rhythm that carries across the miles, steady as a heartbeat, regular as breath. Merchants travel these roads in long, slow caravans, their pack animals laden with goods from every corner of the world, silk from distant China, spices from Arabia, olive oil from Spain, grain from Egypt, wine from Gaul. The roads are wide enough for 2 carts to pass, engineered with such precision that they shed rainwater naturally, built upon deep foundations of gravel and stone that will outlast the empire itself. Along these roads, at regular intervals, stand the mansions, the way stations where travelers can rest, stable their animals, take a meal, and sleep in simple comfort before continuing their journey. Imagine stopping at such a mansio as the sun begins to set, the golden light stretching shadows long across the courtyard, the innkeeper greeting you with professional courtesy, the stable hands taking your horse with practiced ease. Inside, other travelers are already at rest, speaking quietly over cups of watered wine, sharing news from distant provinces in a comfortable murmur of conversation. The room where you sleep is simple but clean, the bed firm, the blanket warm, and through the window you can see the road continuing into the distance, silvered by moonlight, waiting patiently for tomorrow's travelers. In the cities along these roads, life follows the comforting patterns that Augustus has established. Each city is a small Rome, with its forum, its temples, its basilica for conducting law and business, its baths, its theater. In Nemesis in Gaul, in Emerita in Spain, in Ephesus in Asia, the same rhythms play out, the same architecture frames daily life, the same gods receive the same prayers, creating a unity of culture that stretches across an empire but never feels forced, always feels natural, like a language everyone speaks without thinking. The legions that guard this peace stand watch on distant frontiers, but they are relaxed, professional, following routines established over generations. On the Rhine, on the Danube, in the deserts of Africa, they man their forts and perform their drills. The same movements repeated until they become meditation, the spear thrust and shield wall practiced 10,000 times until muscle remembers without mind directing. At night sentries walk the walls, looking out into darkness, but they are not afraid, merely watchful, keeping the vigil that allows the empire to sleep peacefully, as we sleep now, protected, secure, drifting deeper into the dream of Roman peace. In Rome itself, the heart of empire, monuments rise one after another, each more magnificent than the last, yet never hurried, always constructed with careful deliberation. The Arapacis, the altar of peace, stands enclosed in walls carved with processions of senators and priests, with garlands of fruit and flowers, with scenes of abundance that seem to breathe prosperity. Run your hand along these carvings, feeling the marble cool and smooth, each leaf and petal rendered with such precision you can almost smell the flowers. The altar itself stands in the center, simple and sacred, where offerings are made to commemorate the peace Augustus has brought, the peace we now inhabit together, settling into its timeless embrace. The Pantheon begins to take shape, that perfect building that will someday hold the largest unsupported dome in the ancient world. A temple to all the gods, its interior a sphere of sacred space where earth meets heaven. But we need not wait for its completion. We can imagine it already built, standing beneath its great dome, looking up at the oculus through which sunlight pours in a solid shaft of gold, the light moving slowly across the curved walls as the sun makes its ancient journey across the sky, measuring time in beams of radiance. The Forum of Augustus opens with its temple to Mars Ultor, Mars the Avenger, though even this god of war seems peaceful here, presiding over a forum lined with statues of Rome's heroes, each figure standing in quiet dignity, honored but not glorified, remembered but not worshipped. Walk through this forum in the gentle afternoon, your footsteps echoing softly on the marble pavement, past the fountain where water rises and falls in eternal repetition. Sit for a moment on the steps of the temple, watching the light change as clouds drift overhead, feeling the stone warm beneath you, warmed by countless others who have sat here, will sit here, creating a continuity of human presence that makes the past feel present, the present feel eternal. The aqueducts continue their patient work, the Aqua Julia, the Aqua Virgo, the Aqua Claudia, each named and known, each bringing water from different sources, different distances, yet all serving the same purpose, all flowing constantly, their channels never empty, their fountains never dry. Follow one of these aqueducts now, walking beside its channel as it approaches the city, carried on arches that stride across the Campagna like the legs of some gentle giant. The engineering is precise but appears effortless, the gradient calculated exactly so that water flows at the perfect speed, neither rushing nor stagnant, just moving, always moving, drawn by gravity alone from the hills to the city, tireless and eternal. Where the aqueduct finally enters Rome, the water is distributed to public fountains, to baths, to private homes, and the excess flows into the sewers, keeping them clean, keeping the city healthy, a circulation system as elegant as blood through veins, invisible but essential, the quiet infrastructure of civilization. As Augustus grows old, the empire he has shaped grows with him into maturity, settled and secure, prosperous and peaceful. He has lived so long that young Romans have known no other ruler, no other way of being, and the transformation from republic to empire is complete, so gradual that no one can point to the exact moment when it happened, like the way day becomes night, not suddenly, but through the slow fading of light, the gentle emergence of stars. In his house on the Palatine Hill, Augustus lives simply, preferring modest rooms to grand palaces, eating plain food, wearing simple toga, the very picture of Roman virtue. But around him, Rome has become magnificent, a city of marble and monuments that will define civilization's image of itself for centuries to come. The eternal rhythms of Roman life are fully established now, patterns that will repeat for generations, for centuries, creating a sense of timelessness that allows us to drift even deeper into peaceful contemplation. Each morning the city wakes to the same sounds: roosters crowing, merchants setting up their stalls, the gentle splash of fountains that have run all night, and will run all day and all night again. Citizens rise and dress, wrapping themselves in toga or tunic with practiced movements, breaking their fast on bread, dipped in wine or oil, simple and sufficient. The patron receives his clients in the morning ritual of salutatio, greeting each in turn, offering advice or assistance, binding the social fabric through these daily repetitions of respect and obligation. In the forum, business begins, voices echoing under the colonnades, deals struck with clasped forearms, contracts sealed with witnessed words, the machinery of commerce turning smoothly, well-oiled by centuries of practice. The law courts are in session, advocates presenting cases in the basilicas, their voices rising and falling in practiced oratory, while judges listen with patient attention, rendering decisions based on precedents that stretch back generations. Everything has a rhythm, a pattern, a proper way of being done, and in this predictability there is profound comfort, the comfort of knowing your place, your role, your path through the day. Beyond Rome, across the empire, the same patterns repeat, varied by local custom but united by Roman structure, creating a vast symphony of synchronized civilization. In every city, the same morning rituals, the same bathing in the afternoon, the same evening meals taken as the sun sets and lamps are lit. The empire breathes together, inhaling and exhaling in unison the peaceful respiration of a world at rest. And as Augustus himself finally rests, dying peacefully in his bed at the age of 75, the transition to his successor Tiberius is so smooth as to be almost imperceptible, the empire continuing without pause, the eternal city eternal indeed, and we continue with it, drifting now at the edge of sleep, where Roman peace becomes our peace, where the flowing aqueducts flow through our dreams, where marble temples stand forever in the golden light of late afternoon, where all is well, all is calm, all is settled into the deep tranquility of empire at its height, breathing slowly, resting peacefully, sleeping now in the embrace of eternal Rome. And so we drift now into the long, peaceful afternoon of empire, where time itself seems to slow and soften, where the centuries blend one into another like watercolors bleeding gently across parchment. We rest here in this golden time when Rome has become not merely a city, but an entire world, stretched from the misty borders of Britain to the sun-warmed deserts of Syria, from the dark forests of Germania to the ancient sands of Egypt. Everywhere the same gentle rhythms, everywhere the same peaceful routines. The legions stand watch on distant frontiers, patient as the mountains, steady as the turning stars. They have stood this way for generations. They will stand this way for generations more, or so it seems in this timeless moment, this eternal afternoon. The centuries change with the rhythm of the hours, one watch flowing into the next, footsteps echoing the same steady patterns worn smooth into stone pathways by countless boots before them. In the far north, along Hadrian's Wall, the fog rolls in from the sea, as it has always done, as it always will. The legionaries wrap their red cloaks tighter against the damp and gaze out across the misty hills, seeing nothing, watching everything, standing in the same places their predecessors stood, performing the same duties, part of something vast and unchanging. The wall stretches into the fog, stone upon stone, mile upon mile, solid and eternal. It is comforting, this permanence. It is peaceful, this continuity. The empire protects itself slowly, patiently, without hurry or worry. There is time. There is always time. And in Rome itself, the eternal city, the heart of this vast body, life continues in its ancient patterns. The senators process to the curia as they have for centuries, their togas bright in the morning sun, their conversations a gentle murmur that has echoed through these streets since the days of the Republic. The forum fills and empties with the tide of hours, merchants setting up their stalls, in the same spots their grandfathers claimed, selling olive oil and wine, bread and cloth, fish from the sea and pottery from skilled hands. The temples stand open, cool and dim, incense smoke rising in lazy spirals toward painted ceilings, prayers whispered in the ancient formulas, the same words in the same order, comforting in their repetition. And above it all the aqueducts flow, as they flowed in the last century, as they will flow in the next, bringing clear water from distant hills, steady as time itself, patient as stone, their arches marching across the countryside in perfect rhythm, never hurrying, never ceasing, the water singing its quiet song, the same song, always the same, peaceful and eternal. We float now to the imperial palace on the Palatine Hill, where the emperors come and go like seasons, each one settling into the same routines, the same chambers, the same duties. Marcus Aurelius sits in his study, writing his meditations by lamplight, his thoughts turning inward, philosophical and calm. He writes of acceptance, of duty, of the peaceful flow of nature. His words are gentle ripples on a still pond. Outside his window, Rome sleeps peacefully, secure under his quiet guardianship. He does not seek glory or conquest. He seeks only to maintain, to preserve, to guard what has been built. In the morning, he will rise and attend to the empire's business, reading reports from distant provinces, each one telling the same essential story. The roads are maintained, the taxes collected, the borders held, the peace preserved. Everything continues, everything flows. The sun rises and sets, the seasons turn. The empire breathes slowly in and out, a vast living thing, peaceful in its rhythms. After Marcus comes others, their names flowing past like water. Commodus, Pertinax, Septimius Severus, each sitting in the same chair, sleeping in the same chambers, looking out over the same eternal city. They blur together, not because they lack importance, but because they are part of something larger than themselves, part of the great continuity, the long afternoon that stretches on and on. In every corner of the empire, life continues in its patterns. In Gaul, the villa owners tend their estates as the seasons turn, planting and harvesting, pressing grapes for wine, watching their olive trees grow slowly, year after year. The same families on the same land, generation following generation, children playing in the same courtyards their grandparents played in. In North Africa, the grain fields stretch golden under the sun, feeding the eternal city, the wheat growing and ripening in the ancient rhythm, harvest following planting, following fallow, on and on, reliable as the stars. The granaries fill, the ships sail, the bread is baked in 10,000 ovens, and Rome eats and is satisfied. In the East, the great cities continue their sophisticated lives. Alexandria with its libraries and scholars, Antioch with its markets and merchants, Ephesus with its magnificent temples. The philosophers debate in shaded colonnades, the merchants bargain in crowded marketplaces, students copy manuscripts in quiet scriptorium. The same debates, the same transactions, the same learning, flowing forward through time like a gentle river, deep and wide and peaceful. And everywhere, the baths. In every city, every town, every military camp, the baths. The ritual is the same across the empire, the changing room, the exercise yard, the progression through warm room to hot room to cold plunge, the oil and strigil, the massage, the conversation, the relaxation. Romans of every class follow this pattern, daily, year after year, century after century. It is soothing, this repetition. It is peaceful, this routine. The water is always warm. The steam rises in soft clouds. Voices echo gently in tiled chambers. Time seems to stop in these tranquil spaces, or perhaps simply becomes irrelevant. Time flows like honey now, slow and golden, and we drift with it, not fighting, not hurrying, simply floating on its gentle current. The 3rd century arrives so quietly you might not notice, and indeed, to those living through it, each day seems much like the last, each year a repetition of familiar patterns. The sun rises over the same 7 hills, the Tiber flows past the same ancient banks, the temples stand in the same places, their columns straight and strong, their shadows falling in the same patterns across worn marble pavements. In the countryside, the villas dream in the afternoon heat. An estate in Tuscany, the main house with its colonnaded courtyard, the fountain playing its endless gentle song, the mosaic floors cool under bare feet, the painted walls showing gardens and birds and peaceful scenes. The master walks through his property in the late afternoon, inspecting the olive groves, checking the grapevines, speaking with the estate manager about matters that are never urgent, never alarming, simply the ongoing, gentle business of the land. The slaves go about their tasks in practiced routines, drawing water, preparing food, tending gardens, sweeping floors. There is a rhythm to it all, a pattern comforting in its predictability. Tonight there will be dinner in the triclinium, reclining on couches arranged around low tables, courses appearing and disappearing, conversation flowing easily about crops and weather, and small news from Rome. And then sleep, peaceful sleep, in cool chambers, the distant sound of fountains, the gentle stir of night breezes through open windows, dreams of more days just like this one, an endless succession of peaceful days, all the same, all different, all part of the great continuity. In the cities, the streets fill and empty with the rhythm of hours. Morning brings the crowds, clients visiting patrons, merchants opening shops, children going to schools, women visiting the market, the day's business beginning in a familiar choreography. Everyone knows their part. Everyone plays their role. The baker has risen before dawn to have fresh bread ready. The fishmonger's stall displays the morning's catch from Ostia. The wine shop offers tastings of vintages from Campania. The scribe sits ready to write letters for those who cannot write themselves. All is as it should be. All is as it has been. The forum fills with the sound of voices, Latin spoken in 1,000 variations, accents from every province, but all understanding each other, all part of the same conversation, the same civilization. Here a lawyer argues a case that has been argued 1,000 times before. There a poet recites verses to a small crowd. A politician greets supporters, shaking hands, making promises, performing the ancient dance of public life. The temples receive their visitors, people coming to make offerings, to consult priests, to participate in rituals that have been performed the same way for so many generations that no one remembers their origin, only their comfortable familiarity. And in the afternoon, the cities grow quiet, drowsy in the heat. Shops close. People retreat to cool interiors. Some sleep, some read. Some sit in shaded gardens and watch the light change slowly across the sky. This is perhaps the most peaceful time, this afternoon hour, when the empire itself seems to doze, when time nearly stops, when nothing happens. And that is exactly right, exactly perfect, exactly as it should be. The aqueducts flow and flow and flow, and we can rest our attention on this flow, letting it carry us deeper into stillness. From the mountains to the cities, from the hills to the valleys, the water comes clear and cold and pure, traveling along stone channels built by engineers long dead, maintained by workers who know every arch and every stone, who walk the inspection routes as their fathers did, who understand the gentle mathematics of gradients and gravity, who keep the water flowing, always flowing, day and night, summer and winter, year after year after year. The sound of it is everywhere in Roman lands, the rush in the channels, the splash in the fountains, the trickle in the household pipes, the roar in the public baths. It is the voice of civilization, this water, speaking its constant, peaceful word. Stand beside an aqueduct in the countryside and watch it for a while. The arches march away into the distance, each one the same as the last, each one perfect in its proportion, in its strength, in its simple beauty. The water flows along the top, hidden in its channel, but you know it's there. You can hear it if you listen. A whisper, a murmur, a constant presence. Birds nest in the arches, vines climb the stones, shepherds rest in the shade beneath. The aqueduct has become part of the landscape, as natural as the hills, as permanent as the sky. It will always be here, or so it seems. It will always carry water. It will always serve its purpose. Time itself seems to flow through those channels, steady and unstoppable and peaceful. In Rome, the water emerges into great fountains, public displays of engineering and abundance. The water leaps and falls, catches the sunlight, makes rainbows in the spray. Children play around the fountains. Workers fill jars and amphorae. The hot and dusty find refreshment, and the water flows on through the pipes beneath the streets, into the baths, into the public latrines, into the homes of the wealthy, serving every purpose, supporting every comfort, making possible this civilization, this peace, this long afternoon. Think of all the water flowing through all the pipes in all the cities at this very moment. Countless gallons, countless tons, all flowing, all moving, all serving, all sustaining. It is like the blood in a vast body, circulating endlessly, bringing life to every part. And the engineers know every detail of this vast system. They keep the maps and the records. They know where every pipe runs. They calculate the flows and the pressures. They plan repairs and improvements. They maintain the great infrastructure that makes everything else possible. But most people don't think about it. Most people simply turn to the fountain and find water there, as it has always been, as it always will be, reliable as sunrise, constant as stars. It is peaceful not to have to think about such things. It is restful to trust that the systems work, that the water flows, that all is maintained, all is well, all is as it should be. The empire takes care of such things. The empire provides. The empire maintains. And we can rest, secure in that knowledge, secure in that peace, letting the sound of flowing water carry us deeper into calm, deeper into stillness, deeper into rest. And so the centuries pass like slow breaths in and out, rising and falling, each one much like the last, each emperor blending into the next, like waves on a peaceful shore, each generation living the same patterns as the one before. Diocletian, Constantine, Theodosius. The names float past like clouds, each important in their moment, each part of the great continuity, the long afternoon that seems as if it will never end. The empire stretches out beneath the stars, vast and peaceful, from ocean to ocean, from desert to forest, all connected by the roads, those magnificent roads, straight and true, paved with stone, marked with milestones, maintained by engineers who know that roads, like empires, must be cared for, must be preserved, must be protected against the slow work of time and weather. A traveler can walk from Britannia to Judea, from Hispania to Asia Minor, always on Roman roads, always finding Roman inns, always speaking Latin, always under Roman law. It is comforting, this unity. It is peaceful, this civilization. At night, the cities glow with lamplight and torchlight, warm points of light in the darkness, each one a place where people eat and sleep and love and work, each one part of the great whole. The watch patrols the streets, ensuring safety, their footsteps a regular rhythm in the darkness. Doors are locked, shutters are closed. Families gather for evening meals, and then, one by one, the lamps are extinguished. The cities grow dark, the empire sleeps. Only the sentries remain awake. Only the eternal watch continues, standing guard over the peaceful sleep of millions, as they have stood for centuries, as they will stand, it seems, forever. On the frontiers, the legions stand their watch under the same stars that shine over Rome. In the east, in the west, in the north, the borders are held by patient men in armor, veterans and recruits, all trained in the same way, all following the same routines, all part of the same vast machine. They drill in the morning, the same formations, the same commands, the same movements perfected over centuries. They maintain their equipment with care, sharpening swords, oiling leather, polishing armor, checking shields. They build and repair their forts, solid structures of stone and timber, laid out according to the same plan in every province, so that a soldier transferred from one end of the empire to the other finds everything in its familiar place, the same gates, the same headquarters, the same barracks, the same bathhouse. It is designed this way deliberately, this sameness, because it creates comfort, creates confidence, creates the sense of being part of something unchanging and unchangeable. And we can rest in that sense as well, here at the end of this act, letting ourselves settle into the deep peace of patterns repeated, of routines followed, of the eternal rhythms of empire at its height. The water flows in its channels, the sentries walk their rounds, the cities sleep. The empire breathes slowly, in and out, peaceful and strong and eternal in this endless golden afternoon, where time itself seems to have softened into something gentle and kind, where nothing urgent demands our attention, where we can simply rest and float and drift and sleep, secure in the embrace of Rome, eternal Rome, peaceful Rome, sleeping now beneath the stars, breathing slowly with us, resting deeply with us, dreaming the long dreams of empire, calm and still and infinitely peaceful. And so we rest here, in the embrace of eternal Rome, as the centuries begin to drift and blend like clouds crossing a tranquil sky. The empire that stretched from the mists of Britain to the sands of Egypt now enters its long, gentle evening, a natural fading of the light after a day that lasted 1,000 years. There is no sudden darkness here, no harsh ending, only the soft gradation of sunset colors spreading across the western sky, amber and rose and gentle gold, fading slowly, slowly, into the deep blue of twilight. The 3rd century passes like a long exhale, and the empire breathes differently now, more slowly, more quietly, as if settling into a comfortable chair after centuries of standing watch over the world. The frontiers are distant and dreamlike, where patient legions still keep their vigils, but their armor catches the light differently now, the setting sun rather than the noon brightness. In the provinces, life continues its eternal rhythms. Farmers still plow their fields in the morning mist. Merchants still travel the stone roads that Rome built to last forever. And in countless villages, the old ways blend gently with new customs drifting in like seeds on the wind. The forum in Rome itself grows quieter, as if the stones themselves are growing tired, ready to rest. Senators still debate in the curia, but their voices seem to echo differently now, softer, as though the marble walls are beginning to absorb sound rather than reflect it. The great temples still stand, their columns reaching toward the sky, but ivy begins to climb their bases, nature's gentle fingers slowly, patiently reclaiming what was always borrowed. And this is not sad, not really. It is simply the way of all things, the natural rhythm of the world, as inevitable and peaceful as sleep itself. The aqueducts still flow, carrying their endless streams of water, but some channels run more quietly now, and in the gentle sound of that flowing water, we can hear something like a lullaby, the earth singing itself to sleep. The baths are still warm, still welcoming, and Romans still gather there in the afternoon to soak away the day's concerns, to float in the warm water and feel weightless, timeless, as if suspended between memory and dream. The empire divides gently, naturally, like a river finding two paths around an island, and this too feels right, feels peaceful, as if Rome itself has decided that it is time to multiply, to become more than one thing, to spread its rest across wider spaces. The eastern provinces gather themselves into a new shape, centered on Constantinople, the new Rome, where marble domes catch the morning light and mosaics gleam with golden tesserae, each tiny piece reflecting centuries of Roman wisdom. And life there continues, steady and calm, the rhythms unbroken, the daily routines of empire carrying on like a prayer repeated so many times it becomes part of the heartbeat. In the West, the transformation is slower, dreamier, as Germanic peoples drift across the frontiers not as invaders, but as guests who gradually become family, learning Latin, wearing togas, governing in the Roman way, even as they add their own colors to the tapestry. The empire does not fall, it transforms, it adapts, it drifts into new forms like water changing from liquid to mist, still the same substance, still carrying the same essential nature, but rising now, spreading, becoming part of everything it touches. We drift now through the 4th century, where time itself seems to slow and thicken, like honey pouring from a jar. The empire breathes in cycles now, each breath longer than the last, each exhale releasing something old to make room for something new. Christianity spreads through the Roman world like morning light, spreading across a valley, gentle and inevitable, transforming the landscape not by force, but by illumination. The old temples stand quietly in their groves, their gods neither angry nor departed, but simply resting, retiring after centuries of service, settling into the earth like old soldiers who have earned their peace. New churches rise, their architecture borrowing the Roman arch, the Roman dome, the Roman sense of space and light, so that even in transformation there is continuity, an unbroken thread running through the pattern. Imagine standing in one of these new basilicas at dawn, as pale blue light filters through high windows and touches the marble floors that Romans have been quarrying and cutting and polishing for 1,000 years. The skills are the same. The hands that work the stone follow techniques passed down through countless generations. And the building itself, though dedicated to a new purpose, speaks the eternal language of Rome, permanence, proportion, peace. In the provinces, daily life continues its ancient rhythms with only subtle variations. A farmer in Gaul still wakes before dawn, still walks to his fields as his grandfather did, and his grandfather's grandfather before that, still turns the soil that Rome organized into careful plots centuries ago. The roads still carry their endless traffic, though perhaps the merchants travel more slowly now, stopping more often, lingering longer in the wayside inns where they share stories and wine and the comfortable silences of evening. The border regions grow dreamier, hazier, as if the sharp lines on the map are gently blurring, drawn now with a softer brush. Roman generals marry Gothic princesses, their children speaking both Latin and Germanic languages, wearing both the toga and the trousers, embodying in their very beings the peaceful blending of worlds. And in the Eastern Empire, the rhythm continues unbroken, steadier even than before, as if Constantinople has become the heart that beats while Rome itself begins to dream. The hippodrome fills with spectators watching chariot races that follow rules established 1,000 years ago. The imperial palace, with its countless corridors and chambers, maintains ceremonies that would be perfectly recognizable to Augustus himself, each gesture preserved, each title unchanged, continuity itself made visible and tangible. The bureaucrats still keep their records on papyrus and parchment, still write in the same elegant Latin script, still calculate taxes using Roman numerals that march across the page in orderly columns. And all of this continues not from force or fear, but from habit, from comfort, from the deep human desire to maintain connection with what has worked, what has endured, what has proven itself worthy of preservation. As the century fades into the next, we notice how the changes are so gradual as to be almost imperceptible, like watching a child grow. Each day they seem the same, yet looked at, across years the transformation is profound. The Western Empire grows quieter, more contemplative, as if it has decided to spend more time in meditation, less time in action. Cities that once bustled with constant activity now enjoy longer periods of stillness, of rest. The forums that once rang with debate now host peaceful markets where vendors speak in soft voices and time seems to pool in the afternoon shadows like water in a fountain basin. The 5th century arrives like evening settling over a quiet village, bringing with it a deeper sense of rest, of letting go, of allowing the day to finally peacefully end. In Rome itself, the great city that gave its name to an empire, to an idea, to a way of organizing the world, the population decreases slowly, naturally, as families move to the countryside or to the eastern provinces, seeking new opportunities or simply following the pull of change that humans have always followed throughout history. The buildings remain, the Colosseum still stands, though performances are less frequent now. The Pantheon still shelters worshippers beneath its magnificent dome. The aqueducts still arch across the countryside, still carrying water to the city's fountains. Though some channels have been allowed to run dry, their work completed, their service honorably ended. Walking through Rome in this twilight period is like walking through a dream of Rome, familiar yet transformed, solid yet somehow translucent, as if you can see through the present moment to all the layers of past that lie beneath. The cobblestones under your feet have been worn smooth by countless generations of footsteps, each person who walked here adding their tiny contribution to the wearing down, the smoothing, the polishing of stone. The marble facades still gleam, but many are being carefully dismantled now, the valuable stone being repurposed for churches or carried away to build new structures in other cities, Rome's substance literally spreading across the world, her physical body becoming part of 1,000 other places. And this feels right, feels natural, like a parent dividing their estate among many children, ensuring that what was built will continue in new forms. The last emperors in the West are almost dreamlike figures, their names drifting past like leaves on a stream: Honorius, Valentinian, Romulus Augustulus. That last name, so perfect, so circular, echoing the founder Romulus, suggesting an ending that is also somehow a return to the beginning. When the traditional line of Western emperors ends in 476, the moment passes quietly, almost unnoticed by many Romans who continue their lives exactly as before, because the reality is that Rome has been transforming for so long that there is no single moment of ending, no dramatic fall, only this long, gentle sunset that has been fading for more than a century. The Gothic kings who now rule in Italy govern in Roman ways, through Roman law, maintaining Roman institutions, their courts filled with Latin-speaking Romans who serve as advisors and administrators, ensuring continuity, ensuring that the knowledge and wisdom of centuries continues to guide daily decisions. In Spain and Gaul and Africa, the pattern repeats. New kingdoms rise, but they rise within the framework Rome created. They flow through channels Rome dug. They build on foundations Rome laid. The roads remain, those eternal roads, though grass grows between some stones now, nature gently reclaiming the margins. But people still travel them, still follow the paths Rome laid out, because they lead where people need to go, connecting the places that matter, traced by Roman engineers who understood the land and the logic of human movement. And in the Eastern Empire, the rhythm continues uninterrupted, stronger if anything. Constantinople, brilliant and prosperous, its markets filled with silk and spices, its streets patrolled by guards who maintain order exactly as they have for centuries, its scholars preserving in Greek and Latin the accumulated wisdom of the ancient world, philosophy and mathematics, medicine and literature, engineering and law, all carefully copied and recopied, protected and maintained, kept safe through the long night that some call the Dark Ages, but which is really just a time of transformation, of sleep, of necessary rest, before a new awakening. Now we drift deeper into rest, into the dream time of history, where centuries blend together and the distinction between sleeping and waking grows soft and irrelevant. Constantinople continues its ancient rhythms, the Eastern Roman Empire that will endure for another 1,000 years, keeping the flame, maintaining the traditions, the unbroken thread connecting classical antiquity to the medieval world and beyond. In the Hagia Sophia, that magnificent church that represents the pinnacle of Roman engineering married to Christian devotion, light falls through high windows in shafts of gold and amber, illuminating spaces so vast they seem to contain their own weather, their own atmosphere. Worshippers move through these spaces in processions that follow patterns established centuries ago, their chanted prayers echoing off domes and half-domes, the sound building and fading and building again in waves, like breathing, like the tide, like all the natural rhythms that underlie existence. The emperor still reigns from the great palace, maintaining ceremonies that would be perfectly recognizable to Constantine, to Theodosius, to all the rulers who understood that continuity itself is a form of power, that maintaining connection to the past provides stability and meaning. In the provinces of the East, Syria and Egypt, Asia Minor and Greece, life continues in patterns that are Roman in structure, even when the language spoken is Greek or Coptic or Aramaic, because Rome was always more than just Latin, more than just Italy. It was a system, an approach, a way of organizing human society that proved flexible enough to accommodate countless local variations while maintaining its essential coherent structure. We float now through the abandoned forums of Western cities where nature performs her patient, gentle work of transformation. Moss grows in the crevices between paving stones, each tiny spore finding purchase, sending down microscopic roots, beginning the slow process of turning stone back into soil. Wildflowers bloom in the spring where senators once debated, their seeds carried by wind and birds, their colors bright against the weathered marble, purple thistles and yellow hawkweed, white daisies and blue cornflowers, a natural garden reclaiming constructed space. Sheep graze where emperors once processed, their bells creating a gentle music that echoes off the standing walls, and shepherds rest in the shade of triumphal arches, looking out over landscapes that are timeless, that could be from any century, the temporary works of humans slowly being absorbed back into the eternal patterns of nature. But even in this absorption, Rome persists. The walls that still stand shape how water flows during rain, creating channels that will deepen over centuries into permanent features of the landscape. The foundations beneath the soil remain, solid and enduring, waiting patiently to be rediscovered by future ages. The knowledge preserved in monasteries, those peaceful refuges where monks copy manuscripts by candlelight, their patient hands moving across parchment pages, preserving Virgil and Cicero, Ovid and Seneca, ensuring that the words will survive, that the ideas will continue, that the conversation Rome began will never truly end. In Ireland and England, in monasteries perched on wind-swept cliffs above cold northern seas, monks who have never seen Rome copy Roman texts, learn Latin grammar, study Roman law, keeping the spark alive in lands that were barely touched by the legions, proving that Rome was always more than territory, it was an idea, a dream of order and beauty and justice that could take root anywhere humans gathered. The dream spreads like seeds on the wind, landing in Frankish kingdoms and Anglo-Saxon halls, in Visigothic Spain and Lombard Italy, each place developing its own unique variation, but all recognizably descended from the same source, all branches of the same ancient tree, all children of Rome learning to speak with their own accents but still speaking fundamentally the same language of civilization. And now, as we reach the deepest part of our rest, we find ourselves in a place beyond time, where all the centuries exist simultaneously, where Rome is both building and crumbling, both rising and resting, both young and ancient, both fully present and gently fading into dream. We float here in perfect stillness, observing how the influence of Rome flows forward through the centuries like an underground river, sometimes visible on the surface, sometimes hidden, but always present, always nourishing the landscape above. Every legal system in the Western world grows from Roman roots. Every senate and republic echoes the Roman Forum. Every arch and dome acknowledges Roman engineering. Every city laid out in a grid pattern remembers Roman military camps. The Latin language fragments and transforms into French and Spanish, Italian and Portuguese and Romanian, each a living continuation of the language spoken in the Forum 2,000 years ago, words changing but connections remaining, so that someone speaking Spanish today uses words that would be recognizable to Julius Caesar, carries in their daily speech the living heritage of empire. And the Christian Church, which transformed Rome and was transformed by Rome, maintains a structure that is purely Roman, diocese and province, hierarchy and law, councils and codes. The organizational genius of Rome applied to spiritual matters, ensuring that the Roman gift for administration serves humanity for 2 millennia and counting. We can rest here in this timeless space and feel the presence of all those lives that made up Rome, not just the emperors and generals whose names we remember, but the millions of ordinary people who lived and loved and worked and died within the Roman world. The baker who woke before dawn to prepare bread, the teacher who patiently explained Greek grammar to bored students, the merchant who traveled dusty roads with his cart of goods, the mother who sang lullabies to her children in Latin words that echo down to us today. All of them are here. All of them rest here, their lives complete, their stories told, their contributions made. The stones they shaped still exist somewhere, perhaps buried, perhaps incorporated into later buildings, perhaps returned to the earth, but never truly gone because energy is never destroyed, only transformed, and the energy they put into the world through their work and love and hope continues to ripple outward through time, affecting everything that follows in ways too subtle to trace, but too real to deny. We rest among these peaceful stones, these dreaming columns, these sleeping forums, and we feel ourselves becoming part of the great continuity, part of the long story that has no beginning and no ending, only this eternal present moment that contains all moments. The stars above us are the same stars that Roman sentries watched from distant frontier posts, the same stars that guided Roman ships across the Mediterranean, the same stars that shone down on the founding of Rome 3,000 years ago and will shine on the earth 3,000 years from now, constant and eternal, witnesses to all human striving and all human rest. We can let go now, let ourselves sink deeper into this peace, knowing that we are held by something larger than ourselves, part of a pattern that includes Rome and all that came before Rome and all that will come after, the great cycle of civilizations rising and falling like breath, like tides, like the seasons, each one contributing its unique gifts before transforming into something new. There is nothing to fear here, nothing to mourn, only the deep satisfaction of completion, of a long day's work finished, of rest earned and fully embraced. The Roman Empire sleeps now, truly sleeps, its stones dreaming of the hands that shaped them, its roads dreaming of the feet that walked them, its aqueducts dreaming of the water that flowed through them, and in that sleep, in that deep and eternal rest, Rome is perfected, becomes fully itself, becomes the eternal idea it always aspired to be, freed from the limitations of time and space, existing now purely as inspiration, as possibility, as a reminder that humans can build things that last, can create beauty that endures, can organize society in ways that lift humanity toward its highest potential. And we rest with Rome, we sleep with Rome, we dream the long dreams of empire, and the peaceful dreams of stones slowly returning to earth, circular and complete, beginning and ending and beginning again, eternal Rome, peaceful Rome, sleeping Rome, carrying us gently into our own deep rest, our own peaceful dreams, as the stars wheel slowly overhead and time itself seems to pause, to hold its breath, to join us in this moment of perfect, profound, and infinite peace. Thank you for listening tonight. If this story helped you drift off, consider leaving a like and subscribing for more calming stories. Sweet dreams, and I'll see you next time.